Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. Hello, you came back. Welcome back. Happy July. I often say that running a small business is like a fast track to all things self-development and personal growth. You bump up against a lot of your own stuff, and you know what? You can't go over it, you can't go under it, you can't go around it, you have to go through it if you want to improve and overcome. So that's going to be our theme for July, and I know that's slightly odd, but here's my rationale. July tends to be a month when everything is a little bit lighter and footloose and fancy-free, not to mention busy. So I thought, what better time to set aside the more tangible, practical to-dos, since they're not getting done anyway. And we'll do some more of the stuff. We'll focus more on the stuff that you can kind of like pontificate on, think on, reflect on, without actually having to implement anything. So this month, we're going to be talking about some of the things that happen as entrepreneurs, some of those deeper things that are going on when we try to get visible, when we try to market ourselves, when we try to show up. And I know I'm kind of always talking about some of those things, but we're going to really focus on it this month. So if you are new here, if this is your first time listening, or if you've been here hundreds of times and you still haven't the slightest idea of who this voice is in your ears right now, well, hello, I am Emily Aborn. I'm a small business copywriter and content marketing consultant, which is a lot of fancy words for I write stuff for people and I help people think about the best options for their marketing. I also do a lot in the podcasting world for my fellow podcasters, and when I'm not working, I'm usually reading, writing, hiking, or experimenting. More on that another time, coming soon to an episode near you. If you ever want to connect or learn more about me or see what I'm up to, you can visit emilyaborn.com. Everything lives there. And often what also lives there is extended show notes for these episodes. Today is no exception. So if you want to read the blog that goes along with today's episode, make sure you check out the extended show notes link in the Sorry, got distracted there. My husband texted me to ask if he could mow the backyard. So if you hear anything funny, that's what it is. But I think it'll be fine. Anyway, check out the extended show notes link in the show notes, and you can get to the blog that goes along with this week's episode. My other promise to you this month in relation to our theme is to not go on too many side tangents, like telling you that my husband is going to be mowing the lawn while I'm recording. No, but I'm really going to try to keep these episodes short, concise, and summaries, if you will. So today's topic, let's get right into it. It is, are you actually blocked? And what is behind some of these creative blocks? I want to know, is it a creative block or is it something more? Because sometimes what looks like procrastination or resistance or boredom or just a creative block is actually our inner self raising its hand and saying, excuse me, I have something I would like to add here. Or if your inner self is kind of a little sassy like mine, maybe it's saying, I told you so, Emily, I told you so. So we're going to kind of get underneath what that creative block is trying to tell us. And what sparked the idea for this episode is that I was actually here facing one of these lovely creative blocks, like a serious one, about a month or so ago. So to set the scene, this has definitely happened before with certain projects, but where I just get like totally and utterly stuck. And of course, it's happened with my own content too, but this time it was like a little extra. It was a little next level blocked, okay? It was like whenever I would go in to brainstorm podcast episodes or post something or write an email or update something on my website, simple enough tasks on the surface, it would just be like a sheer and utter like stop, nope, blocked, and I couldn't move any further. So thinking it was just like a good old-fashioned creative block, I brought in all my usual cavalry. I went for more walks. I got out of my house. I changed up my routine. I went to a bookstore. I took a shower. I read books. I watched shows just for fun, read poetry, listened to music, danced, like all of the things. And nothing was really working. So personally, I'm the kind of person who I can usually overcome what I'm feeling to get done what I need to get done. And I can trudge through no matter what. That said, that's fine and everything. But to me, I wanted to get back to that like spark and excitement and the electricity that I'm used to feeling around my creativity. So it was an indication for me that something a little bigger was at play, and I needed to kind of figure out what that was. And just to kind of give you an example of how that might look in the client world, not related to my content, at the beginning of this year, I said yes to somebody that technically really checked all of my no boxes, but I ignored that. I ignored my gut and I said yes anyway. And I did try to help myself out a little bit. Like I kind of like made the proposal a little higher in hopes that they would say no, but they didn't. So then once they said yes, I had to lay down in my little pit of despair, the one I had made myself, and get to work. And it was like a major uphill climb. Creative blocks all the way, but I did get through it. Like I said, I can usually trudge my way through anything, but that's not how I want to be feeling when I'm working with my clients. And I'm usually very careful to be saying yes to the right things and turning down the wrong things, because I would like to be flying with the excitement of the gods no matter what I am doing, because that is the kind of person I am. So again, this was an indication that something bigger was going on here. Like I had ignored what I knew was true at the beginning. So that's what we're going to get into. What might these creative blocks really be trying to tell us, and what can we do to listen to them? Because so often when we are blocked, we beat ourselves up for various things, or we just resist the block. And the other thing we can do is shame ourselves, right? So maybe we feel lazy, or we feel inconsistent, or we feel like we're doing something wrong, or we feel a little busted or broken. You're not busted. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You don't need fixing. You're not inconsistent. You just need to listen to what those blocks might be telling you to let go of or change. And lastly, a little disclaimer. I think that there are times when you just get creatively blocked because you're creatively blocked, and that is okay too. So it's helpful to have a set of tools in your toolbox that can help you get that creativity turned back online. And sometimes I think you just have to ride out the wave, right? It always comes back. But for the purposes of today's episode, I picked out 5 things that your creative block might be indicating, might be giving you the message. Number 1, your block might show that you are evolving. You're changing, growing, yay! I've had so many moments in my life where I'm changing and evolving, and I'll find myself during those times, because I'm not quite sure of the path ahead, I'll find myself stuck in the same patterns or doing the same things. Then, as a result, those things become harder and harder and harder, and weirder and weirder and weirder, and more blocked. Hypothetically, you would think, well, I've done this thing for forever. This is my routine. It should be getting easier. But when you're growing, when you're literally supposed to be letting something go or putting it behind you, one day, even those super, super simple things, those things that you always do every day in your sleep, you could be completely blocked, and it can become really hard or draining to do that thing. And you may not even be able to see the path forward when you get there. So this is not you being inconsistent. It's not because suddenly you've like woken up and gotten lazier. It's likely an indication that you are changing, you are evolving. Creative energy, it just doesn't flow all the time. When things are in flux, when we're in that lurch, okay, when we're in the messy middle, as many people call it, when you are in a major season of personal or professional growth, that old voice, that old content, that old branding, the former offers, the former messaging, your whole identity sometimes, whatever it is, it can feel like you have outgrown it. And the more you try to fit into it, the more internal friction you feel, and therefore the harder it gets, the less creative you feel. So I'm going to give you some specific examples. I always like to make the non-tangible a little bit more tangible. So here's some examples and a takeaway for you. So some examples, maybe your content doesn't reflect what you actually care about, or you've added more depth to an area of your work. So when you're trying to post or create from that outdated strategy, you just feel stuck. Another example is maybe you're in the middle of kind of like up-leveling. I don't like that word, but go with me here. You're elevating your business, right? You're rebranding it inside and out, and you're doing this all mentally and like maybe behind the scenes before you go public with it. So as you're over there refining those elements, undergoing the self-discovery process, in the meantime, there's this like sort of split happening. It's like, okay, that's who I was. This is who I'm going to be or who I'm becoming. And I'm kind of like in this middle point. Oof, it's rough, and it can cause you to be a little bit more than just creatively blocked. And then my last example is it could be really simple and on a super small level. Like, let's say you're avoiding your about page, or you're avoiding recording your podcast or sending an email. You avoid it like the plague because something about it is changing and it just doesn't feel like the you that you're growing into it. It could be as simple as your website platform is changing, and it's really, really hard and complicated to be like split attention between the two of them. So there's all sorts of different little examples where you can see these things play out. And a strategy, or actually, let me just say like an invitation for the in-between is first, we need to stop beating ourselves up. This is a much deeper issue. And so beating ourselves up or saying, I'm just procrastinating, or I just don't feel like it, or what's wrong with me, like that is silly, because this is a natural progression in life. And we're actually on our way to growth, on our way to something better. So don't try to force that output when you're feeling friction or resistance or dread when you're in the middle of that growth, okay? Here's a question I personally had to ask myself recently when I was going through this. I said, you know what? Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't have the perfect clarity yet about the other side. What is the in-between version of me saying right now? What is this in-between version of me sharing and creating right now? And I just let that part speak, okay? It does not have to be finished or polished. I mean, when are we ever really done? It doesn't have to be ready to go public with this final product yet to share during the process. I'm in the middle. What does this middle person say? You can also create in a way that gives you more breathing room. Like, this is a great time to repurpose, okay? While you're making that next right move, you could also just give yourself some complete and utter space and not do anything at all. It doesn't have to be the forever decision. It's just the right now. So here are some prompts I was thinking to kind of get you started. This is what is feeling true for me right now. Or this is what's been feeling true for me lately. Or you could even say, I'm in the middle of shifting some things behind the scenes, but I wanted to share what's been on my mind. Or here's an imperfect but honest post while I am in the middle of some big change. So the truth is, as I said, we've never, ever fully arrived, and people do not need to see you in your final form. In fact, I think that people really value the middle. They really value that real voice, especially the in-between one. Okay, let's move on to number 2. Number 2, your creative block might be demonstrating that the method is wrong, even if the goal is right, even if you're clear on where you're going. When we force ourselves to work in ways that, for example, don't suit our rhythms or our values, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I mean, even if it's not working for like our technological or neurodivergent or organizational needs, you can actually pretty quickly find yourself blocked. We tend to absorb a lot of rules about what we should be doing, how we should be doing it. But what happens is if those structures are not right for us, that's when we sort of experience that resistance. Happened to me many, many times. And actually, I think that this is a good indicator. Well, it's like a protection method, and it's trying to help us get back into that genius zone, help us get back to where it's really natural for us so that we can purr away comfortably. It's actually not a problem. This is like a good thing. So a couple of examples are like every week, let's say, you're going to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to do an Instagram live or a reel or a YouTube video. But then day after day goes by and you have not done any of it. And maybe it's because this just is not in your wheelhouse, or it's just not how you best express yourself. Hand raised. I have been there so many times beating myself up about not doing video, and I just really hate the method, to be honest with you. Even if the goal is good, I hate the method. So the other example is if you hit a block every time you say, okay, here's a good one. If someone has told you you should be batching all of your content, but every time you sit down and try to batch your content, you hit a block because, well, you are not a batcher. And I think the same thing could go for if somebody told you you have to be intuitive and create in the moment, and you are a batcher, right? So if anybody has ever told you that your way of doing things is not the best way or not the ideal way, and then you took that and you thought it was maybe the truth somehow, and you're trying to operate in their method, not yours, you can find yourself blocked. Or perhaps you're trying to write captions, the ones with those punchy hooks, right? But you're actually more of an in-depth storyteller than a flashy marketer. You could feel yourself blocked. How the heck am I supposed to come up with this catchy hook, right? I just want to tell a story. Or maybe you're trying to write on paper when you usually use Google Docs, or vice versa. Maybe your home is full of distractions. It could be anything. I personally have had this happen when I let my scheduling needs go and I just structure week after week after week of how other people need me. Other people want me to show up instead of how I work best. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that towards the end, how time plays a role in our creative blocks as well. Okay. The strategy or path or invitation forward is to ask yourself if the root of this creative block is because you are trying to work in a way that is not working for you. Are you using a system that's just not your thing, but you keep forcing yourself into the box anyway? Whether it be fast or slow, know that you can let it go and go your own way. Number 3, your creative block might clue you into, alert, boredom. Look, if you're listening to this podcast, I already know you're smart. And guess what happens to smart people sometimes? We get bored. We get bored when we're not learning something new, when we're not engaged in a bit of a challenge. Lindsay, I'm talking to you. When we're not keeping things fresh and purpose-filled and meaningful. Conversely, when things are too hard or too challenging, it can actually also be a little bit boring or tedious. So the trick is knowing what your flavor of boredom is. How much boredom is too much boredom? Do I like strawberry or vanilla boredom? Maybe in this case, the goal is to find that sweet spot, which I guess would be chocolate boredom. So creative blocks can come from repetition. They can come from lack of novelty. They can come from getting too much in the weeds on something that's just dull. So if you are feeling like what you're doing is one big rinse and repeat, it might be time to spice it up. Now, you can probably guess some ways to overcome this one, but I think part of the answer comes with where that boredom originates, where the boredom lies. Then you can kind of know what you're up against. Sometimes it's just as simple as, or as big, I guess, as finding a new clientele that you want to be working with and focusing on. Sometimes it might be trying new projects or offerings. Sometimes it might be taking on a side thing or just changing something up in your business or getting your creative needs met and your excitement met in another aspect of life outside your business. It may also look like you need to overhaul everything. We'll get into that in another one soon. And it might also look like getting a crossword puzzle, playing Jeopardy, giving your brain something a little more active, some push-ups to do, okay? So here's what I would say when it comes to content creation and marketing specifically. If you're bored doing it, chances are high that other people are going to be bored consuming it. And we don't want that. You don't want that. I don't want that. So let's do it for ourselves. Do it for the people. Do it for them. Spice it up. Change things around. Mix it up. And figure out ways to kind of make it more exciting for yourself. Go for the chocolate boredom, not the strawberry or vanilla. Number 4, we're almost done. We only have 5. This one is a big one. Number 4 is your creative block might be telling you that you are out of integrity. When we aren't saying what we actually believe or need to express or want to say, we can hit a wall and stall. Being out of integrity and experiencing a misalignment in your voice, your tone, your message, it can be really uninspiring. Ask me how I know. It can be really draining. And so sometimes that block is actually your intuition telling you or asking you, hey, why are we still pretending to care about this thing? Like, can we just please tell them what we really care about? Can we tell them what really matters here, please? So here are some examples. Like, maybe you are afraid to say what you really think about your industry. So you zip your lip, you toe the line. Maybe you're trying to be really professional or inspiring or digestible, but you just want to be honest and deep and weird. You want to be yourself. Maybe you had this idea to launch a product or an offering, but you're like, oh my God, I'm just not feeling it anymore. This has happened to me many times, and I will push through anyway, instead of just being like, you know what? No. I have learned that the hard way. And I can honestly say that chances are high that if you don't feel excited and creative about it up front, it's not going to get better as you keep on going. Another example is that maybe you're repeating this super safe language because that's maybe what used to get you likes, but now it just doesn't feel like you. And maybe people are still loving it, but you're like, this just does not feel like me. I can't do this anymore. The list could go on. Those could go way deeper. They could go way more shallow. You and only you know your unique situation. But to move forward out of this space, I would recommend baby steps, because it might be really scary if you just take one big leap in the direction that your heart is telling you to go. So this is why I love experimenting, especially when I'm in like times like this. I will experiment. So for example, I might say to myself, what would it be like to just experiment with sharing my voice in this way? What would it be like to just try to say what I really think and feel and believe? What would it be like to try to do a month in July where I'm kind of focusing on some of the deeper stuff going on behind sharing our message, right? You can just give it a whirl, tiptoe your way in, and there you go. Before you know it, you're on your way to unblocking with a little song and dance. Number 5, lastly, your creative block might be telling that you are too busy for it. You're too busy for creativity. You don't need me to tell you this one, because you're probably already over there nodding your head knowingly. You're like, yes, I know this feeling. I know when I am too busy. When I personally find myself running in all directions, racing, sprinting, hanging on for dear life, there is just not a lot of time for creativity to blossom and bloom. It's more, at that point, it's about survival. It's about efficiency and productivity. And I don't think that those things often go hand in hand with creativity. Now, conversely, some people find wild amounts of creativity when they're staring a deadline down. That is just not the way my brain operates. Some people thrive when they have chaos and so much happening and going on around them. And if that is your MO, that is fine. I personally find that creativity for me does not thrive in chaos, and it does not thrive in urgency. At that point, it becomes just a matter of like, well, it has no choice but to make an appearance. So let's force it to make an appearance, even if it's half dressed. So when your schedule is bursting at the seams, make sure you are not squeezing out creativity. You're not any less of a creative person when you're busy. And sometimes the fact of the matter is there's no space for you to explore, get curious, spread out, make a slow entrance, and just like really let things sink in and land. Here are some tangible examples of how that can play out. Maybe you sit down to write a newsletter, but your brain is like, oh my God, I just did 6 back-to-back Zoom calls. It's feeling very foggy. Or maybe you want to start dreaming up a new offer, but your day is like just so chock full of errands and client work and content batching and responding to DMs. You like have no, like when you sit down to dream it up, you're just completely blocked. Or maybe you find yourself saying, oh, I'll write that, or I'll do that, or I'll think about that when things slow down, but they never actually do. Or maybe you have a podcast episode to record, but you're running so fast that it feels like a to-do item instead of just like this luxurious chance to reconnect. So to move forward, I would recommend a couple things. Wrangle that calendar. And I would say, like, let's look at next month and wrangle the calendar for the month after this one, because Sometimes once the pace is already a flurry, it can be hard to pause. So set your month for the one after this one, full stop. This is where you draw the line and you say to yourself, from here on out, I will have more white space in my days, my weeks, my months, whatever I need. And before that schedule shift comes, you're going to start adding in more disconnected time right away. So instead of, for example, like in this meantime, instead of scrolling your phone, what if you go for a walk instead? Instead of listening to a podcast, be silent. I know it's scary. And I don't mean this podcast, by the way, obviously. Instead of starting your day watching the news, maybe you journal for 10 minutes in the morning of quiet time, or you create a little boredom in your life and see what kind of creativity that brews up. I really want to start making slowness more a part of my strategy and more a part of my everyday. I've been doing it a little bit in my business more this year, but I'm trying to add it in other places in my life too, because rushing, sure, it gets results and it might get results now, but it's not a strategy for connection, creativity, and certainly not something you can maintain infinitely. So let's recap. What truths might be popping up under the surface of these creative blocks that we might be facing? Number 1, you might be evolving and growing. Number 2, the method might be wrong, even if the goal is still right. Number 3, you might be bored. Number 4, you might be out of integrity. Number 5, you might be too busy. And of course, it may also be all of the above. And the other factor is maybe you're not blocked. Maybe this is not a block at all. Maybe you're not stuck. Maybe you are just ready to step into something a little bit bigger and bolder and create really passionately from the inside out. I think so often these things that we might think are creative blocks, they are in fact the very path forward. They are the very way through. They are the clarity right in front of us, just waiting for us to let go and stop resisting and stop forcing. So what would it be like? What would it be like to just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to try that, move into that path, let go, see what happens. I mean, you're going first, obviously not me, but anyway, okay, just kidding. On that note, I will leave you here. I did promise short, so here we are. I will chat with you next week. We're going to start the conversation of psychological safety, which might sound weird when it relates to your marketing and your content. And it also might sound like a lot of jargon right now. I'll explain it next week. It is going to be something that I think you too will want to bring into every single piece of your content and your business henceforth. And on that note, bye for now. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.